Hapaday and good evening, everybody. This is a very full lecture hall this evening. We're excited to see that. Welcome to the 25th lecture in the University of Guam Presidential Lecture Series. My name is Jonas Makapinlak. I'm the Director of Integrated Marketing Communications here at the University of Guam, and I will serve as your Master of Ceremonies for the evening. At this time, I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests, starting first from the University of Guam, our 10th President, Dr. Robert Underwood. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to his wife, the Honorable Dr. Narissa Britannia Underwood, Senator in the 33rd Guam Legislature. Dr. John Peterson, Assistant Vice President, Graduate Studies, Research and Sponsored Programs. Dr. Margaret Hattori Uchima, Dean of the School of Nursing and Health Sciences. Apologies, I see Dr. Anita Borja Enriquez, our Senior Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs. We also have Dr. Nicholas Gutsford, President of the UOG Faculty Senate. From the University of Guam Endowment Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome former Governor Joseph F. Ada, Vice Chairman. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Judy Wampat, Speaker, 33rd Guam Legislature. The Honorable Benjamin Diaz Cruz, Vice Speaker, 33rd Guam Legislature. And at this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage Dr. Robert Underwood, our 10th President.
Hapaday, buenas noches. It's good to see so many people here for what promises to be a very exciting and stirring presentation by our special guest this evening. At universities, we like to talk about literacy and rationality as if they were the only things that were interchangeable. We focus so much on the printed word that sometimes we fail to recognize the primacy and preeminence of the spoken word, upon which literacy was originally constructed. To sound intelligent at universities, we asked each other, what was the last book you read? Or what are you reading right now? We don't ask each other, what speech did you just hear? Or what have you heard lately that has enhanced your intelligence? But our world in reality is mostly an oral one. And certainly our indigenous cultures are primarily based on oral traditions. This is an important matter to consider, especially when we confront word artists, experts in poetry, who are meant to be heard and not just read. When we hear a strong voice giving life to a human condition, which some may dismiss as a rant, but in reality can be turned into a work of art. The spoken word requires us not just to be awed by the words of a powerful speaker, but requires us to perfect our skills as listeners. We have to learn how to listen all over again. We have to learn not to be wowed by gadgetry or expect fireworks and widgets to capture our moment. Kathy Jetnil-Kijiner is a practitioner of an old art, even though she is a member of what we like to call the millennial generation. She uses the tools of the trade, and her fame has been spread by social media and technology. But technology is not her primary tool. Her primary tool is an inner voice trying to get out, a view of justice that puts islands at the center of the universe, rather than just at the periphery. She is an accomplished poet. We can say that it is part of a tradition and a voice going back centuries, but is now given life through the internet. Her YouTube clip from the UN presentation she gave last year has 116,000 views. My 2014 commencement speech last year has 16. I think most of them were family members. So tonight, we are fortunate enough to be graced by her presence. She is the youngest speaker at the University of Guam Presidential Lecture Series, and she is the first from the Marshall Islands. I was reminded at a conference recently that by a civil rights worker who was involved in the freedom bus rides, as he was talking, he said, you know, a prophetic vision is the province of the young. And sometimes that's a little bit bitter to repeat when you're 66 years old. And you only get 16 views on your YouTube. But her presentation is entitled Iep Jeltok, a basket of poetry. It's my honor and my privilege to welcome to the stage Kathy Jetnil-Kijiner.
Okay, so I'm going to rove around a little bit. Okay. Good, I'm glad you guys approve. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here to speak in front of you all. And this is actually only the third time I've ever been in Guam. I've been here once, twice, just kind of on layover overnight, and that was really about it. So I never really got to see it, and I never really got to speak to that many people. So I'm very grateful to be here. So I just want to thank everyone who got me out here. You know, Mr. Robert Underwood, Mr. Gerard. You know, I wouldn't have been able to come out if it wasn't for them. So thank you so much. Also, just to say, I wouldn't feel so bad about the 16 views. You know, a cat on a stroller or something like that gets like more views than me. So it's no big deal. So I just want to also point out that I know this is called the Presidential Lecture Series, which sounds very serious and very, you know, whoa, big deal. But I'm kind of a little bit more of a talk story type. So I hope you guys don't mind that I'll mostly be talking stories tonight with you all, just to share my journey, basically my journey and the poetry and kind of what inspires me and what got me here today, and what got me to the United Nations and to speak in front of the United Nations. So yeah, so first, some of you might be wondering what Iep Jeltok means. If there are Marshallese, who's Marshallese in here actually? Is there anybody who's Marshallese here? Woo! Nice! I like to see all the Lumayo. Shout out to the Lumayo. Yeah, very cool. I like that. Okay, sorry, just wanted to make a shout out to my peoples, you know. Although you are all my peoples, technically, you know, we're all doing this together. So yeah, Iep Jeltok, just a quick definition. Oh, first, you know, in case people don't know where the Marshall Islands is, this was from an older presentation, but there, right there, there's Marshall Islands. So that's where I'm from, yes. So Iep Jeltok is a saying, it's a common saying with Marshallese people. We say it when a girl is born, okay? So it basically means a basket whose opening is facing the speaker. So when a daughter is born, a lot of people say, Iep Jeltok, you know, oh, Iep Jeltok, which basically means you're fortunate to have a daughter. The idea is that women are, they bring, what's the word? They bring good things to the family, right? It's a basket of offering, you know, that faces the family because our society, Marshallese society, is matrilineal. So land is traced through our mothers and passed down through our daughters. I think this is a really beautiful concept. I love this concept. I've always loved it. That's why it's the name of my blog, it's the name of my chapbook. I have poems about it. I just have it everywhere. So I thought this was kind of an appropriate title for this because it's a kind of a jumble of things, you know, a basket of different ideas and concepts that I've come across and that I've put into my poetry and my writing. So first of all, the first poem I want to perform for you all today is a poem called Tell Them. And so maybe I should actually give a little bit of a background about me also. So I was born in the Marshall Islands and raised in Hawaii. So I moved to Hawaii when I was 6 years old and I graduated out of there. And then after that, I moved to California, got my bachelor's in creative writing, finished school over there, went out to the Marshall Islands, worked over there at the college, went back to school, and then just came back again to the College of the Marshall Islands. So that's where I'm teaching right now. So spoken word art is something that I latched onto. You know, this is something that just clicked for me right away when I was a senior in high school. I loved writing from when I was 6 years old, from when I was in 6th grade, or 3rd grade, actually, sorry. 3rd grade was when I wrote my first poem. It was about an invisible elephant. Yes, it was a big hit. So that was my first poem. And so I always wrote. It was always a way for me to understand the world around me. When I had a spoken word workshop in high school, that's when I saw this like potential. It was a potential for me to kind of share my different stories with the world. You know, there was this connection, not just with the page, but with an audience, with people, and that's the connection that I was craving, you know. And then I happened to start performing, and I also got into more poetry scenes, poetry for the people. I got into the Bay Area culture of activism, and I started to see that poetry could do more than just express feelings and emotions, you know, which is very important, but it can also move people, it can also educate people. And that's when I started to work on my writing, and that's when I started to kind of push my writing in that sort of direction. So the first poem that got me into that direction was, that was first out on YouTube. Actually, how many people have seen any of my YouTube videos? Okay, all right. Well, you're gonna hear the poems again, but it's live, so it's better, I promise. You know, cross the fingers. So yeah, the first poem that I put out on YouTube was a poem called Tell Them. Okay, so this is a poem about climate change primarily, right? But it was inspired by Marshallese handicrafts, what we call Marshallese Animono. So this is a Marshallese basket right here, right? So this is what Marshallese people are very famous for. So I'm gonna just, and this might seem kind of crazy, but I'm just going to pass this around. So maybe you guys can pass it around and look at it and just, you know, just to see and feel it. So this is a basket, and I had this idea of sending a basket to my friends. I was concerned with sending my basket of amimono to my friends in the States. And I was thinking, you know, what would I want them to know? What would I want them to tell the people of the United States, you know, their friends, their family members about the Marshalls? And one of the issues that, you know, what I wanted to tell them was about, you know, the beauty of our islands. That it's just so beautiful in its intricacies and in its problems and in its dysfunction, but also in its sunsets and, you know, everything about it. So anyways, these are photos of amimono, some examples of Marshallese handicrafts, but I'm sure you might have seen it around by now. So it's from the pandanus tree, right? So this is just for background for people who might not know. This is the pandanus tree. The leaves are beaten and then woven into the handicrafts, right? So this is a picture of women weaving for a Jagied project at the University of South Pacific. There's been a revival, actually, of Marshallese weaving over at the University of South Pacific at the Marshall Islands campus. So this is a photo of that. At the same time, I didn't want them to just tell them about the beauty of the Marshalls. I wanted to tell them about climate change, right? So this poem was written at the time when I just came back from college. I had heard about climate change, I heard about it on the news, whatever. I just pushed it to the back of my mind. I didn't want to worry about it. But when you get out to the Marshall Islands, and when you see how vulnerable the island is to the ocean, it changes your perspective on climate change. And I know it changed my perspective because, as many people know, the land is just completely flat, and then there's ocean on either side of you, and the ocean is so big, and we are so small, and the idea of losing our islands to that ocean was terrifying. So I started to kind of obsess about it. I started to do a lot of research on it. And what I found was that a lot of the articles writing about climate change focused a lot on the science behind it, on the politicians, but not necessarily on the people who'd be losing their islands. I never heard Marshallese voices. I very rarely heard Marshallese voices. I very rarely heard Kitawa's voices. I didn't hear other indigenous people's voices. And that's kind of what I thought was missing in all of this discussion, And also, a lot of the discussion kind of centered around, will they still need passports? Where will they go? Where will they move to? Just assuming that we would have to leave, that there was nothing the world could do for the Marshallese people. I didn't buy it, I don't buy it. I think that, I feel that the world can do something, that there is still time to do something to save these islands. And that's what I wanted people to know. I wanted people to know, and I wanted these journalists to know that we shouldn't have to move, that we should never have had to move, And so I decided, one night I was just hanging out with my family, listening to my aunties and cousins singing, and this poem came out. And, these are some, just to show a little bit more about, this is just recently, actually. This was this past January in the inundations. The water, you can see the water is completely at level with the land, right? So that's the high tide level. This was not, or supposed to be a king tide season, right? So scientists say that there are times in the year when there's a king tide season, that's when the tides are the worst, right? This was just a regular high tide, but the sea level is such that it's risen up so much that just a little high tide just completely decimates, the island. So this is the other part. This is some other photos. This is by the airport of the Marshall. This is another house. This is the drought that happens after, because after the water leaves, right? The salt dries up the breadfruit trees, right? And that's a source of food for us. This is actually a friend of mine, his house completely flooded. He had to replace a lot of the house. And this is my cousin's house, completely destroyed after the water, completely just destroyed. She's currently right now going through loans to have to rebuild her home because of what happened, because of this king tide. Because this was actually the last king tide from last, I think it was March. So let me just perform a poem, tell them, and I'm going to just share this poem with you guys. Yeah. I prepared the package for my friends in the States. First, the dangling earrings, woven into half moons, black pearls glinting like an eye in a storm of tight spirals. Second, the baskets, sturdy, also woven, brown, cowrie shell shiny, intricate mandala shaped like calloused fingers. Inside the basket, I write a message. Wear these earrings to parks, to classes and meetings, to the corner store, the grocery store, and while riding the bus. Store jewelry, incense, copper coins, and curling letters like this one, in this basket. And when others ask you where you got this, you tell them they're from the Marshall Islands. Show them where it is on a map. Tell them we are a proud people, toasted dark brown as the carved ribs of a tree stump. Tell them we are descendants of the finest navigators in the world. Tell them our islands were dropped from a basket carried by a giant. Tell them we are the hollow hulls of canoes as fast as the wind slicing through Pacific seas. We are wood shavings and drying pandanus leaves and sippy burritos at canyons. Tell them we're the sweet harmonies of mothers, aunties, sisters, songs late into night. Tell them we are whispered prayers, the breath of God, a crown of fuchsia flowers, encircling anti-matted white seafoam hair. Tell them we are whispered prayers. Tell them we are the breath of God. Tell them we are papaya golden sunsets bleeding into a glittering open sea. We are skies uncluttered, majestic and sweeping in their landscape. Tell them we are styrofoam cups of Kool-Aid red, waiting patiently for the lunar. Tell them we're the dusty rubber slippers swiped from concrete doorsteps. We're the ripped seams and the broken door handles of taxis. We're sweaty hands shaking another sweaty hand in heat. Tell them we are days and nights hotter than anything you can imagine. Tell them we are little girls with braids, cartwheeling beneath the rain. We are shards of broken beer bottles burrowed beneath fine white sand. We are children flinging like rubber bands across a road clogged with chugging cars. Tell them we only have one road. And after all of this, you tell them about the water, how we have seen it rising, flooding across our cemeteries, gushing over our seawalls, and crashing against our homes. Tell them what it's like to see the entire ocean level with the land. Tell them we're afraid. Tell them we don't know of the politics or the science, but we see what's in our own backyard. Tell them some of us are old fishermen who believe that God made us a promise. Tell them some of us are a little bit more skeptical. But most importantly, you tell them that we don't want to leave. We've never wanted to leave. And that we are nothing without our islands. Thank you. So that was the first poem that I put out on YouTube. But there was a second poem. It's called History Project. So this one was all about the nuclear legacy of the Marshall Islands. So for those who don't know, there is a very, very traumatic and horrible history, a horrible thing that happened to the Marshallese people. And it was the nuclear testing, when Bikini Islanders were forcibly removed from their islands and they tested nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons that were 1,000, 10,000 times stronger than the bombs dropped in Hiroshima, than the nuclear tests that were conducted in Nevada, and it had all types of horrible, horrible effects on our people, right? So we are plagued by cancers, thyroids, birth defects, all because of the radiation from the nuclear weapons. So this is a history that obviously we've all, all Marshallese people grew up with, right? All Marshallese people know this story. We know it. We have all had family members die from cancer, okay? And yes, cancer exists in other parts of the world, yes. I've heard that argument. But, dealing with this nuclear legacy, it's a completely different type of struggle. It's a completely different type of trauma that Marshallese people have had to deal with. So I grew up knowing this. But when I was 15, I decided to do a history project on nuclear testing so I could learn more about that project, right? So in doing this project, it was a very big deal for me. I'm 15, I'm learning about this project, I'm learning about nuclear testing, I'm learning all these horrible things that I didn't really know before. And then I decided to enter my project into this district-wide competition called History Day. And it was this whole deal about me trying to put myself out there, trying to put my people's history out there and fight for my people. That was how I saw it. You're 15 years old, this is your fight. But then I lost it, right? And it just kind of stayed with me. It stayed with me. Obviously, you're just a kid, you lose a history project, whatever. But, but it stayed with me. It was very, it stayed with me because I felt like I lost on behalf of all Marshallese people, which is obviously a little bit dramatic. That's a poet for you, right? So, but when I got to college, I decided to write about it mostly because when I was in California, You know, that's where I was going to school in Oakland, California. I just got really tired of meeting so many people who just had no idea about this history. None, just no idea. And I thought, you know, wouldn't it be great if I could do a poem that, you know, tells this story, you know, tells them about what happened, you know? So that's what I decided to do. I set out to write a spoken word poem all about the nuclear testing. Because honestly, it was just because I just wanted people to know. I just want people to know that this happened to us, you know? So yeah, this is that's the next poem that I'll perform for you guys. Oh, these are photos from the Nuclear Zero. There's some Nuclear Zero lawsuits, right? And this is they've been doing a lot of campaigns, and this is from one of the survivors, John Nanjing, you know, being quoted. I think they translated from Marshallese to English, telling them about how our lives were smaller than a fingernail, we used to see guinea pigs, you know. This is another survivor, nuclear survivor. For those of us who were affected by the testing, there's no sense of fairness or justice in the present situation. Rather, there's a distinct feeling that the promise has not been kept. So this is a poem that I wrote specifically for educating the public about what happened. At 15, I decided to do my history project on nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands. Time to learn my history, I decided. I weaved through book after article after website, all on how the U.S. once used my island home for nuclear testing. I sift through political jargon, tables of nuclear weapons with names like Operation Bravo, Crossroads, and Ivy. Quotes from generals like, 90,000 people are out there. Who cares? I'm not mad at all, really. I already knew all of this. I glanced at a photograph of a boy, peeled skin, arms, legs suspended, a puppet, next to a lab coat lost in his clipboard. I read first-hand accounts of what we call jelly babies, tiny beings with no bones, skin red tomatoes. The miscarriage is gone unspoken, the broken translations. I never told my husband. I thought it was my fault. I thought there must be something wrong inside me. I flipped through snapshots of American Marines and nurses branded white with bloated grins, sucking beers and tossing beach balls along our shores. And my islander ancestors, cross-legged before a general, listening to his fairy tale about how it's for the good of mankind. To hand over our islands. Let them blast radioactive energy into our lazy-limbed coconut trees, our sagging breadfruit trees, our busy fishes that sparkle like new sun, into our coral reefs brilliant as an aurora borealis woven beneath a glassy sea. God will thank you, they told us. Yes, as if God himself ordained those powdered flakes to drift onto our skin, our hair, our eyes, to seep into our bones. We mistook radioactive fallout for snow. God will thank you, they told us. Yeah, as if God's just been waiting for my people to vomit all of humanity's sins onto impeccable white shores gleaming like a cross burned into our open, scarred palms. At one point in my research, I stumbled along a photograph of goats tied to American ships, bored and munching on chunks of grass. At the bottom, the caption read, "Goats and pigs were left on naval ships as test subjects." Thousands of letters flew in from America protesting animal abuse. At 15, I want megatons of TNT, radioactive energy in a fancy degree, anything and everything I could ever need to send ripples of death for people who put goats before human beings, so their skin can shrivel beneath the glare of hospital room lights. 3 generations later, as they watch their mother, their grandmother, their auntie's life drift across that same black screen, knots of knuckles tied to steel beds, cold and absent of any breath, but I'm only 15. So I finished my project. Graph my people's death by cancer and cancer diabetes on flowcharts in 3D. Glue stick my ancestors' voice onto a poster board I bought from office knives. Staple tables screaming the millions of dollars they stuffed into our mouths generation after generation after generation. And at the top, I spray painted in bold stenciled yellow, "For the good of mankind," and entered into a school district-wide competition called History Day. My parents were quietly proud. And so was my teacher. And when the three balding white judges finally came around to my project, one of them looked at it and said, yeah, but it wasn't really for the good of mankind, though, was it? And I lost. So I just want to talk for a second about how important it is to me that art and activism are included and prioritized together, right? It can't exist without each other, you know? I've talked to quite a few people who mention activism, who mention art separately, you know, but I think that there is a platform, there is a space that's so necessary to include both, you know, to speak to all of these kinds of injustices and to use the art for that. So the next poem that I put out is a poem about Micronesians in Hawaii, about growing up Micronesian in Hawaii, growing up a coastal migrant in Hawaii. So these are some photos that I just put together. There's Josie, right up there, who went to school with me. So like, you know, like much like Guam, they have a very similar situation to Guam. A lot of Micronesians are moving out of our islands for healthcare issues, for education issues, you know, and unfortunately there is this terrible situation where, you know, the federal government isn't supporting the states, and those states are in turn shouldering a lot of the, you know, the financial burden, and this resentment is just trickling down, trickling all the way down into our school system, into our children, into our relationships with one another, and suddenly we are left fighting for scraps. And unfortunately, Micronesians, coastal migrants specifically, are the new kids on the block. They are at the bottom of the ladder at the moment, and you know, unfortunately, we've been getting a lot of smack. And this is kind of the situation that I grew up in Hawaii, right? So I grew up believing that my culture was something ugly. I was told over and over and over and over in many different ways that I wasn't Marshallese, I was Micronesian. That's easier to understand. You know, I was told that I was too pretty to be Micronesian. I was too smart to be Micronesian. Every time a teacher was surprised that I excelled, they told me that, you know, my culture was ugly. And so this kind of, it kind of turned into internalized racism, right? I started to internalize all this hate, and I started to believe it and believe it and believe it until one day I looked up and the core of my being, you know, that cultural root that tied me to my islands was shriveling up. And I had lost my pride in my language. And it wasn't until I went to college, again, in Oakland, and I had a friend of mine say to me, hey, you know, you're from Hawaii, right? And I said, yeah. And she's like, well, you're Micronesian. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, don't they hate Micronesians there? And it was just so blunt. I was like, well, thanks. But at the same time, you know, and it was good that she said that, right? Because suddenly I had the space away, because I was in Oakland. I had the space to kind of pull myself away and examine it, this hatred, you know, I examined it. And I said, where did this come from? Why do I hate my culture? How did I lose my language? How did all of these things happen, you know? And so I started to write this poem, and I gotta tell you, man, this poem was hard, okay? This poem was tough. It took me years, it took me 3 years to write this poem. And it was because I had to keep revisiting it, right? I had to keep understanding and untangling all of these memories and try to understand this systematic racism that kind of got entrenched, that I got entrenched in as a child. And so I wrote this poem. And shout out to my homies, Ken and Fran. I read the poem to them first. And, you know, I got their feedback, and they were like, this is going to make people mad. I was like, oh, well, let's just do it. Not really thinking about it, but I probably should have thought about it more. But, you know, I just kind of dove in with it because I was tired. I was tired of people not talking about it. You know, I grew up with adults whispering about this over the dinner table, you know, not openly discussing it out in public. And yes, they were in certain ways, I guess. But I wanted to speak out to that kid, you know, who's sitting there and being told that their culture is ugly. And, you know, ever since I performed this poem, it's actually really amazing. You know, every time I go to high schools in Hawaii or to elementary schools and I say, hey, raise your hand if you're Micronesian. No one will raise their hand, even though I can tell which ones are Micronesian. I'm like, I know I'm Micronesian. And then and their teachers are like, hey, what are you doing? Raise your hand. But then I say, I'm Marshallese, and then they're like, oh, okay. So yeah, I know, it's messed up, right? So either way, I just realized this is really affecting us, you know, it's affecting our communities, it's affecting us working together towards a better, you know, future for everyone, right? So anyways, I wrote this poem, and I have to apologize. I see some kids, I see some elders, I cussed at the beginning. Sorry. So, but yeah, I wrote this poem. Oh, well, I guess I should show you the rest of the slide. So, remember this? I don't know if everyone knows about this. This is the Micronesian Mart in Hawaii. This was graffitied on it, return our tax dollars. You know, a little bit misinformed. It's the whole, you know, it's the whole narrative that a lot of people have bought into, that they're losing their tax dollars to Micronesians, you know, because Micronesians are living off of, you know, healthcare benefits, welfare, you know, and it's just, it's not a correct narrative, right? And then, you know, the jokes on the radios that I grew up with. This was a joke that was just recently told in Hawaii this past June. It was told over the radio, and man, it was bad. Why aren't there many beautiful Micronesians? Because babies with birth defects are usually terminated before birth. Ha! Yeah, not funny. Also, it just doesn't make sense. You know, it's not a good joke. I mean, the setup's not really great. Yeah. But yeah, it was horrible. So there was a whole petition against it. I mean, I'm proud to say that there was a whole petition. We had friends who spoke out against it, signed it. A lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people here even signed on to it. And those, you know, those radio DJs, what happened with them? They were like, they were laid off. They were laid off for a bit. And they had to do a bunch of Micronesian segments to kind of raise awareness. And I think it, you know, yeah. So I think it was good because, you know, at least it got the conversation going, right? It got people to finally say, hey, this is not okay. You know, because so many Micronesians in Hawaii, you know, avoid certain radio stations because we know they tell those jokes, these kinds of jokes. And we just accepted it, right? So it was good to finally stand up. It was very empowering, you know, to see our people do that. This is another joke. What's the difference between a Micronesian and a cockroach? A cockroach will survive a nuclear blast. I know. It's so bad. It's so bad, right? That's terrible. Don't be doing that stuff. I know, I shouldn't be going around telling these jokes. Anyway, I'm just like spreading it around. Now you didn't even tell a joke. Don't tell them, I promise. Okay. All right. So yeah, you know, these are also headlines that were around, you know, it's all over. Even politicians. This is Charles Julie, who's running, a politician running. He was quoted as saying, within the first 30 days of getting elected to office, I'm going to make it a point to engage the U.S. State Department and the Micronesian government to rework the Compact of Free Association. So his whole idea was he would fix the Compact of Free Association, because we haven't been trying to do that for a while. But that's not super hard. Yeah, that's totally doable. But yeah, he was running on this platform for a very long time. And he definitely had his supporters, and this was just despicable to me. But anyway, so this is the poem that I wrote, mostly just to raise awareness, mostly to kind of just smack people in the face and be like, hey, wake up, this isn't okay. Let's talk about this. Let's move on from this, you know? So yeah. Lessons from Hawaii. Lesson number 1. Fucking Micronesians! That's my 7th grade friend. Cussing at those boys across the street, rocking swap meet blue t-shirts, baggy jeans, spitting a steady beat on the stream. One of them is related to me. You know, you're actually kind of smart for a Micronesian. And that's my classmate, who I tutored through the Civil War, through the first immigrants, through history that always seems to repeat itself. Lesson number 2, Micronesians. Micronesians, as in small. Tiny crumbs of islands scattered across the Pacific, too many countries, cultures no one has heard about, cares about, too small to notice, small like how I feel. When woman at the salon, filing, delicately tracing white across my nails, stops and says, you know, you don't look Micronesian. You're much prettier. Lesson number 3. Prettier, as in not ugly like those other Micronesian girls, always walking by the street smiling, rows of gold teeth like they got no shame, with hair greased and braided, cascading down dirt roads of brown skin, down shimmering dresses called Guams and neon-colored turquoise skirts, and I can hear the disgust in my cousin's voice. Look at those girls. They wear their Guams and skirts to school like they're at home. Don't they know this isn't their country? This is America. See, that's why everyone here hates us Micronesians. Lesson number 4. I'll tell you why they hate us Micronesians. Because we're neon-colored skirts screaming different, like that ESL, like that kid in that ESL kid whose name you can't pronounce, whose accent you can't miss. Different, like Walmart, Mickey D's parking lot tickets and fights, those long hours, those blue-collar nights. Different, like parties with hundreds of swarming relatives, aunties, uncles, cousins. Fish barbecued on a spit, my uncle waving me over. If they don't mind. If they come, let's eat. Lesson number 5. Headline, no aloha for Micronesians from Hawaii. Headline, Micronesians fill homeless shelters. Headline, Micronesians run hefty healthcare tab. Quote, hey, why did the Micronesian marry a monkey? Because all Micronesian women are monkeys. What? Can't you take a joke? Lesson number 6. It's actually not Micronesian. It's Marshallese, Yappies, Chukis, Palauan, Kosrayan, Pohnpeian, Chamorro, Kiribati. But when Hawaii insists on lumping us all together, when they belittle us and tell us we're small, when they tell us our people are small, when they give us a blank face, when they give us a closed door, when so many in Hawaii hate Micronesians, when so many in Hawaii hate us. Lesson number 7, that's how I learned to hate me. So I realized that there had definitely been tensions and struggles in Guam regarding that COFA situation, I'm speaking at the social worker conference tomorrow, and I'm hoping to speak out, to that topic, and just basically advocate us to work together, to learn more about each other, to have more conversations. Conversations are so necessary to moving forward, to healing, So the next poem, so these are the 3 poems that I had out. The last poem that I'll be performing for you guys is the one that I performed this November, or not November, sorry, September. Man, my days are fully off. This September at the United Nations, right? So something happened this past year that kind of changed everything, right? I had my first daughter. So I know you just have to clap for it, right? So she's so her name is Matafele Benam Kathy Makirusa. Matafele is because my partner is Samoan, and that's the name of his grandmother, but it also has many deep meanings. The eyes of the coconut, as he explained it to me. It's a village in Samoa. Represents completion, as he explained it to me. Benam is her Marshallese name, and that's the wattle that's a piece of land that my family originates from in Deloitte. Kathy, because there's a whole line of Kathys. I'm Kathy. I know, it sounds like I'm just naming her after myself, but I'm not. it's a whole family thing. You know, my mom's name is Kathy, my grandmother's name is Kathy, so we continue with Kathy. Yeah. Using the photo. I know. I just had to throw it in. I know, she's great. This is one of my few nights away from her, so I do miss her. So I just had to show her off a little bit. So anyway, this basically changed my whole life. Completely changed it, right? Total 180. You know, and at the same time, it changed my perspective on things. It changed how immediate everything was, right? When you become a parent, suddenly everything is so much more dangerous. Everything is so much more scary. It affects not just you. It affects this next generation, this cute little, you know, this adorable little thing, you know? It affects her. And, you know, so I got back to, I graduated after I had her. I finished my thesis, went back to the College of the Marshall Islands. I start teaching, and I get this call from the U.S. Embassy. The ambassador called me and says, hey, so, you know, can we nominate you for this climate summit? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Okay, I gotta go. And then just kind of like ran out, because I was like busy. And I was like, sorry, ambassador, I got stuff to do. I got students, they are important. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't really talk to him like that. So anyway, so, you know, I said, yeah, sure, not really thinking about it. And then it turns out that, you know, I got this email later from the United Nations saying, okay, we've narrowed it down from 500 applicants to 50. There's only 4 speaking roles. Send us a video to tell us why you should be chosen. And I'm like, whoa, this is way more competitive than I thought. You know, I thought it was one person from every country. And it turns out it was very competitive. So I said, okay, whatever, I'll do a video. So I do a video, I send it in, and then I hear back, and they're like, well, they call me, actually, the marshals. They call me and they say, you are one of the 4, you definitely have a speaking role. I'm like, great, cool, not bad. And then they call me up the next day and they're like, you are opening it. And I was like, no! I was like, that is terrifying. I don't want to do that at all. So there was over 150, you know, states, heads of state, you know, broadcast, United Nations, biggest audience ever, scary stuff, all right? So, you know, but at the same time, you know, climate change was happening, and I thought, you know, this is my chance. This is my chance to speak out for the Marshalls, for the Pacific, okay? This is it, right? We are the ones on the front lines of climate change. Not just the Marshalls, the whole Pacific. We are it, right? So that's why I saw it. So these are some videos, these are some photos. This literally just happened about a month ago. So this was a flooding at my friend's house. She had just moved in. That's not her house behind her. Her house is on the other side. That's a pig's pen. But I realized how misleading this photo is when I told them she's in front of her house. I'm like, no, it's not her house. My bad. But it did significantly, you know, damage her house. She had literally just moved in the night before. Like after years of saving up for this house, and just in one night, just completely messed up, and she had to move back, you know. And so this was incredibly frustrating for me. You know, this is very personal. So this is another photo I took. But at the same time, you know, there are people doing things, right? So okay. So first, I guess I should back up a little bit. I'm speaking to the United Nations people. They're telling me, okay, you have a 2-minute speech, and then you have a 3-minute poem, like a 3-minute thing that you can speak over a video. All right, that's it. And I said, okay, great, I have a poem already. I'll do tell them. You know, I'm like, yes, I'll do tell them. It's good. And then she was like, no, we want you to write something new and memorize it and have it be super inspirational. What? Give me a break. I got so mad. I was super mad. But, you know, I was like, okay, just send me as many photos as you can of the climate movement. Because they were telling me, you need to not just speak to Marshallese people. You need to speak to the whole world. Because climate change affects the whole world. You know, and I never really thought of it like that, right? I'm so focused on the Marshalls. I'm so focused on the Pacific. And suddenly I had to, you know, figure out how to do that. And I didn't know how to do that. So I just told her, okay, just send me as many photos as you can of the movement. And I saw all these beautiful photos of people doing things. So this is from the Marshalls. This is actually us. But these are some of this is also recently in Sacramento. Marshall people were leading it and saying, you know, you want to power. This is the anti-fracking. So these are all different photos. This is actually one of my friends up here. She was in a canoe blockade with 350.org. It's a nonprofit organization. She worked with them, and they actually blocked a whole coal ship. It was just mostly a demonstration. This is it right here. This was literally right after the UN summit. This is the People's Climate March. All these people marching. Yeah. So these are also there's more. You know, there's more of them. You'll see it in the video that I'm about to pull up. But there are just thousands of people out there doing things for climate change. You know, I saw these videos and I was just moved. You know, I was incredibly moved. I thought, wow, we might have a chance. I didn't know that there were so many people fighting for this. I thought it was so beautiful. And then I thought, okay, how do I write about this? How do I write about this? And I realized, well, I don't know how to write about that, but I'm a new mother. Maybe I can write a poem to my daughter. Why don't I do that? I can talk to her. I can tell her, that, hey, we are doing everything we can right now to change things. Okay? So, anyways, I finally did write it. And let me pull it out right now, the video. So I don't know how loud it is, so we might have to do a little technical stuff. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Thanks. This is a video that they created as a backdrop at the United Nations. Dear Mata Philippines, you are a 7-month-old sunrise of gummy smiles. You are bald as an egg and bald as the Buddha. You are thighs that are thunder, shrieks that are lightning, so excited for bananas, hugs, and our morning walks along the lagoon. Dear Mata Philippines, I want to tell you about that lagoon, that lucid, sleepy lagoon lounging against the sunrise. Men say that one day, that lagoon will devour you. They say it will gnaw at the shoreline, chew at the roots of your breadfruit trees, gulp down rows of seawalls, and crunch through your island's shattered bones. They say you, your daughter, and your granddaughter too will wander, rootless, with only a passport to call home. Dear Matita, don't cry. Mommy promises you, no one will come and devour you. No greedy whale of a company sharking through political seas. No backwater bullying of businesses with broken morals. No blindfolded bureaucracies gonna push this mother ocean over the edge. No one's drowning, baby. No one's moving. No one's losing their homeland. No one's gonna become a climate change refugee. Or should I say no one else? To the Carteret Islanders of Papua New Guinea, and to the Taro Islanders of the Solomon Islands, I take this moment to apologize to you. We are drawing the line here, because we, baby, are going to fight. Your mommy, daddy, boo, Jima, your country, and your president too, we will all fight. And even though there are those hidden behind platinum titles who like to pretend that we don't exist, who like to pretend that the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Maldives, Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, all the earthquakes and the hurricanes and tidal waves didn't exist? Still, there are those who see us. Hands reaching out, fists raising up, banners unfurling, megaphones booming, and we are canoes blocking coal ships. We are the radiance of solar villages. We are the fresh, clean soil of the farmer's past. We are petitions blooming from teenage fingertips. We are families fighting, recycling, reusing, engineers dreaming, designing, building, artists painting, dancing, writing, and we are spreading the word. And there are thousands out on the street, marching hand in hand, chanting for change now, and they're marching for you, baby. They're marching for us. Because we deserve to do more than just survive. We deserve to thrive. Dear Auntie Filipina, you are eyes Thank you. So yeah, things have changed significantly since that poem. I'm very involved in a bit of, climate change movement, climate change activism. So I guess I was at this retreat recently, a climate change retreat, and I was asked. They use this thing a lot. They called you have to have an ask. You have to have something to ask people, something to do. And mine is just, do what you can, join the climate movement, believe in it, know that it's real. And when there are demonstrations, when there are actions that you know of, and when there are people who doubt it, let them know, hey, it exists, it's real. People are struggling, and we need to do something to change it, So I guess that's my ask. But yeah, I think I'll end my presentation there. Is that a little early? How much time do we have?
All night.
No. I should add that I wasn't late because I was being a diva and I needed to do my hair. I literally just got off the plane and just got here. I just literally just came. That's how I was getting you guys on. I was like, I need to get to UOG. So, how much, I kind of forgot how much time did we have. Well, questions, actually, that would be great. I can definitely take questions. So, if anyone has questions, oh, yes. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Thanks. Of course. Any other questions? Yes. The biggest climate change project I'm currently working on is I'm trying to establish something called the Climate Institute at the colleges in Marshall Islands. So I just literally got the approval 2 weeks ago to do it. So we have something called the Nuclear Institute that houses all the research, on nuclear, our nuclear legacy. So now I want to do something similar to that, except the Climate Institute. And I want it to be focused mainly on, Marshallese people, but also, of course, have an art space, have an art space and focus on creating arts with students, motivating our students. So that's really the biggest thing for me right now, is just kind of focusing on motivating and trying to engage as many students as possible. Yeah, thanks. Good question. Also very nice. Big in the jewelry. Yeah, very nice. Very matching. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Is there a possibility that in the future, sometime in the next couple of months, that we possibly bring back to Guam to speak to our public schools and our private schools as well?
I would love that. Yes, definitely. I would definitely love that. We can talk after. I can give you contact and stuff. I definitely love to talk more with Micronesian youth, especially. I think my focus right now is kind of reaching out to as many Micronesians as possible. So I performed quite a number of times with Marshallese people and Marshallese students and high school students. So I definitely like to reach out to more Pacific, focus more on the Pacific and Micronesian. Yeah. So yes, definitely.
Half a day and welcome to Guam. My name is Vera Dioro and we've been in contact.
Oh yes,
I'm
hi.
so thrilled that you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Regarding the last question, if she could come back, I have been in contact with Kathy to pretty much get her interest in returning to Guam for FestPac. Right, so I see Senator DJ. And we have an audience here that is moved by your talk, and I'm so pleased to meet you, and we definitely will talk some more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, Carteret Islanders. Yes. I actually have to look that up again. The last time that I looked it up was, I was looking at people who were already climate refugees. I just knew that Carteret Islanders were preparing to move. Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's actually happened yet. I can't answer it just yet. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the creative process? How did you come along to write poems?
okay, the creative process is always research. I always tell my students that. I'm like, research. People don't know a lot of research goes into writing poetry, right? So a lot of times I have to research as much as possible to get to get to where I need to get to, right? So I research the topic, I look at videos, I look at pictures, I look at quotes, and that all kind of just inspires me to write a poem. So I didn't know I'm leaders here. Sorry. I don't mean to shout you out. It's just that poem, Lessons from Hawaii, was specifically inspired by her poem about my community. So I just wanted to shout you out and say thanks.
This is Jetnil-Kijiner. I'm a student here at UOG, Stephen, and I just wanted, you mentioned earlier about the intersection between art and activism.
Yes.
Well, what would you recommend, or how would you, what would you say to students who wanted to get into the forefront of your movement, or the movement that you're a part of, and how would you say, or what advice would you give to someone who wants to apply their, I guess, their ideals to that kind of activism?
Good question. Apply their ideas to that kind of activism. I guess, just find the movement. Just find there's usually movements already existing. If it doesn't exist, we gotta just create it, right? So, so I mean, I think it's all about finding like-minded people, people who see something that needs to be changed, something that they want to see changed, something that they see is wrong, an injustice, and speaking out about it, right? And then if you have artist friends, if you do art, using that artwork to raise awareness in some way, right? So I think, does that answer your question? Yeah, that's about it, right? There was actually another thing I was going to talk about for a short period was that, CMI has just recently joined the divestment movement. College of the Marshallese divested from fossil fuels. So, our college of the Marshallese president, he's been trying to get more, colleges throughout the Pacific to join that movement. So that will be, one movement that UOG students can jump on board with, is the divestment. 350.org, they do some pretty cool work. That's also another organization that I work with. Yeah, those are just some quick ones off the top of my head, but those are mostly climate change related. Yes.
Good day, Kathy. I'm Victoria Leonborough.
Oh, hey,
Most
yes.
communicated through email. Actually, the 3 poems that Kathy read were published in UOG's literary journal Storyboard.
All right.
Yeah, so if you want copies of Storyboards, they're for sale at the English department.
Shout out, good yeah, I like it.
I wanted to kind of make a connection for the audience, between the nuclear testing and climate change, if there is one that you can speak to, because right now the world is watching the Pacific for the Pacific pivot and this whole military buildup and really hyper-militarization of the Pacific region, which is why also what you're doing is so important, because the world should be watching the Pacific because of climate change. And so how do those two things work together and against each other? How does militarization contribute to climate change?
Whoa, good question.
Military testing in particular, which
well, I know that with nuclear testing, I can definitely speak to the connection between the two issues. I was just asked recently about that, and what I always say is that it's these two situations where this larger nation is just doing whatever they want, right? And then it's affecting these smaller communities at the bottom level. And in the end, it's kind of about whose lives matter and whose lives don't. Nuclear testing, hey, these people don't matter. Let's test our bombs in their islands. Climate change, these people don't matter. So what if they're going to lose their islands? Let's just keep doing what we're doing and emitting what do you call it, consuming. So I think that's kind of the connection also between militarization and climate change, is that consumption. I mean, the militarization, military complex is, a huge user of fossil fuels. It's a huge contributor to climate change, because of the fact that they use so much of that energy, right? And then it's also military, these military complexes taking over our lands, taking over our islands, and using it for their own purposes. So I I have a lot of family members who are in the Army and who fight, and I have nothing but respect for them and for their struggles. But there's this bigger industry, the military industry, that's just wreaking havoc on our islands, on the world, and that's kind of how I would speak to it. I know I'm not as sciencey, but yeah. Any other questions? Does that answer your question? Yes. Yes.
Well, it's not so much a question, but it's just something that I would like to say for tonight. My name is Kathy Jetnil-Kijiner, and I'm a teacher over at George Washington High School. I teach basically physical science and biology, and we are working on zero emissions. That's our project for this school year. But I'd just like to make a connection here, that it's only fitting that after 75 plus years after the hydrogen testing in the Bikini Islands, that it has to be a Marshallese. It has to be a Marshallese to speak for the islanders. After all, that's where the damage was done. And 75 plus years later, we have another catastrophe, climate change. So it's only fair that a Marshallese speak out to the countries around the world, and that's how I want to see it as a final stage. So we admire the work that you're doing out here. I think it's really great, and I think that you should continue, and I'm pretty sure that tonight our youth here will continue that job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I have nothing but faith in our youth, honestly. I really do. I always tell my students, I'm like, you guys are the cream of the crop. You guys can do this. So I would say the same for you. Oh yeah.
Okay. Buenas and happy day. Welcome to our island, Guam. Thank you for coming and sharing your piece with us. One of the most profound messages that you shared with me, and that I think has a lot to speak to as well on our island, is this message of a unified Micronesian people, and identifying with Chamorros and with Chukis, and seeing each other as brothers and sisters who come from islands and whose homes and whose cultures are very connected. The question that I have is that in terms of movement, is there a movement that you are aware of or that you are part of that we can plug into that is specifically promoting or advocating that sort of oneness across the island? And maybe if it's not only across Micronesia, maybe even across the Pacific. Is there something that young people can easily plug into, whether it be a social media or something of this sort? Is there any place that you can direct us to go to either express ourselves or to learn more about what that means and to kind of create meaning in that sense?
Good question. Very good question. Wow. Well, first off, it's interesting, that whole idea of the Micronesian term, right? So I know that some Micronesians don't like being called Micronesian for different reasons. There are those who don't like to be called Micronesian because of internalized racism, because they've been told that their culture is ugly and they believe it. Then there are those who don't like the term Micronesian because honestly it's a term that was created by some random foreign guy who just sailed through and decided Micronesia, like what? So I mean, it's not a term we decided for ourselves. The boundaries that was created was not a boundary that we decided for ourselves. But here we are, thousands of years later, using that, right? But I think that the term Micronesian can be useful for coming together as a people, right? So with basic healthcare Hawaii, which is, for those who don't know, a lot of Micronesian COFA's migrants in Hawaii would be losing their access to healthcare because of something called Basic Health Hawaii. And this is a situation where I would use and advocate the term Micronesian, because I want, that's when all Micronesians have to come together and fight for it so that we can all have health care, because we deserve health care because we're sick and we need help, right? As far as the movement for all of the Pacific, I honestly would say climate change. I mean, why not? I mean, climate change affects all of our islands. We are, the Pacific Islands will be the first ones to go, right? Not just the low-lying atoll nations, but even nations such as Guam, even nations such as, you know, the rest of Samoa, you know. These are all islands that will be going first. Our islands will be the first ones to go. So I would say, yes, that's a movement that I think all Pacific Islanders can come to terms with, right? It's all about protecting all of our islands. And one movement that I have jumped on, you know, that I use a lot in the Marshall Islands, and you know, is 350 Pacific, the 350 Pacific Climate Warrior Movement. So this is the first movement I've seen, honestly, that prioritizes specific voices for climate change. This is the first organization that prioritizes it, so that's why I jumped on it. You know, they're the ones that kind of created the tagline, "We are not drowning, we are fighting," which I love, right? And so I use that a lot. I could talk to you more about 350 Pacific, you know, about other intricacies that kind of go with it. But I think that's kind of what I would advocate for the youth here and for the youth in the rest of the Pacific, is just coming together. You know, I think coming together under that might be one. I honestly think there's just a lot. I think there's a lot of different movements, right? I might just not be aware of all of them. So I think just kind of keeping an eye out and remaining open to learning about other cultures and learning about other struggles. Even the Free West Papua campaign, you know, there's one right there. West Papua has been, you know, completely, oh my God, it's horrible what's happening in the West Papua. So, you know, maybe learning a little bit more about that campaign, Pacific Islanders coming together and saying, hey, you know, we are all protesting against the injustices that the Indonesian military is inflicting on these people, because there's thousands of people dying over there, you know. So, and that's all from this terrible history. So I think that's kind of another one right there. So those are kind of two movements that I've been kind of on. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to call the president up for university presentation.
Oh.
Sorry to make this a little bit more formal, because you're a terrific voice. The authenticity of your voice is just manifestly obvious, and it's a great honor to have you here. And you know, the best advice to people who want to join a movement is, if you can't find one, you should just start one. You know, that's always the best advice there is. And there's always people that are willing to engage. This were China, we'd start right today, we'd start the March 18th movement right now. And there's, you know, coming right out of here. You just go right to a coffee shop and sign a manifesto and you're on your way. But I do want to, the power of your story and the voice, that it is entirely appropriate for a Marshallese person to lead the charge is so historically on target. I'm always constantly reminded, he's no longer in Congress, but a good friend, Eni Faleo Magaenga, always used to say, the U.S. detonated 158 nuclear devices, 2 on their enemies and 156 on their friends. And so that's the reality of that, and of course that's the burden. But I do want to present to you, as a token of our appreciation, a little memento, and you know, it's an appreciation, 25th Speaker, University of Guam Presidential Lecture Series, Kathy Jetnil-Kijiner, March 18th, 2015. Now, I know we all want to take pictures with her and we all want her autograph, but just be mindful that she has a major presentation to give tomorrow morning as well. It's in the afternoon. Oh, so talk to her all night. In that case, she has lots of time to see. Thank you again. Como taka.
Carmichael's here.